Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spiritual Journey podcast. My name is Nimesh Radia, and I'm your host. I always love starting each episode by saying thank you. I feel so very blessed with this podcast. The support I've received, the guests I get to interview, the messages I get on a weekly basis. My objective of the podcast is really to simplify spirituality and guide people on their spiritual journey. It's my way of giving back, and I feel very grateful, very humble with this message. With this podcast and the ability to share whatever knowledge. There's a lot of shifting happening on the planet right now, and I send everybody so much love and light. Quick intro for me. I'm an Akashic record reader, Akashic trainer, podcast host, podcast creator, as well as a spiritual coach and mentor. I love what I get to do. I get to guide people to be their authentic selves, to shine their light, to really be the light workers that we signed up for as souls. And I love what I get to do. I feel very blessed. And a beautiful part of this podcast and the role that I get to do is also get to interview some beautiful, amazing souls. I am excited to have Jayne on the podcast today. Jayne is somebody I've only met recently, but we've had some beautiful conversations, even the conversation we had just before starting recording. And I'm excited to have her on the podcast. Jayne, I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Nimesh, thank you so much. I'm also really grateful and appreciative of you and your work in the world. And thank you so much for inviting me in to speak to you today. Who am I? I think it's going to take me a lifetime to kind of answer that question. But yeah, I guess some of the labels I could attach to myself are I'm a founder and CEO of Sacred Changemakers, which is really my legacy work. I've spent 30 years in kind of corporate and leadership development in my own business since 1996. And I'm a mother, I'm a lover, I'm a friend. I love life. And I guess I'm an incredibly curious human, which has opened many doors for me over my lifetime. And I continue that journey of curiosity to see where the energy wants to take me. And today it's brought me here with you.
And I feel very blessed with that. So thank you. It's interesting you talked about labels, right? And it's interesting that I talked about kind of what the planet's going through and the shifts. And so let's start there. I'd love for you to kind of give your overview of where you feel the energy is right now. I know, we're just for insight, we're recording this on Thursday, 9th January. Kind of, for me, the January is really still a transitional month. It still feels like we're in a 2024 energy, but it feels like the planet's going through a massive shift. But I love your take on it. Where do you feel we are energetically at this time?
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's so funny, in some of the spiritual traditions I've studied, they talk about like the inter-between spaces, the corridors of life. And in some ways, I think that the transitions that we're going through right now are, I'm going to say, soul defining, because that's what it feels like, almost like, when I look out into the world and I hear other like spiritual leaders or thought leaders speaking about the times that we're in, there's so many different labels we can put to it, moving from 3D to 5D, we're awakening, all these different things that give us like an access point into a meaning of where we are. And, in corporate, they're talking about VUCA, the volatile uncertainty that we're all kind of dealing with right now. And I actually think that is so true. But I think for many of us, I think there's a reluctance to turn and face reality. I think there's so many of us that, the easy access point and way of describing this is that we're still asleep, because in some ways uncertainty is scary for some people, particularly for leaders, and the way that we've been socialized into the modern world with consumerism and growth and individualism, and this idea of more at any cost. And I think we're starting to see the consequences of our actions probably over the last 50 years of my lifetime, from the 1970s when consumerism really started to almost go on fast speed ahead. And now we're seeing the consequences of that through almost like a meta crisis that we're facing in human terms, in climate terms, in inequality. I mean, there's so many different challenges in the world, and we've created a complex world as humans. But the big question for me is, now we know, what will we do from here?
It's really interesting. I love the way you call it soul defining, because I do really feel that every soul that's here right now is chosen to be here.
Yeah.
And we're going through this transition, and you talked about it, right? I see it as a transition from the divine masculine to the divine feminine, and everybody's going through this crisis, right? And
Yeah.
whatever anybody picks to do is right for them. There's no right or wrong, but you started with your intro saying, what labels are you going to give yourself? I find that interesting because I feel what we define ourselves as is being challenged.
Yeah.
And you talked about it. Change is very uncomfortable for humans. Most people say, I love change, but you only love change if you can see it coming. You know what it looks like. If you don't know what's coming and because everybody can feel the uneasiness, right? The uncertainty of what's coming next. It's like, energy feels different, but it's like if you go back to when we were locked in, right? When COVID, there was an uncertain energy. No one really knew. And it was like, wait, hold on. And it feels like it's that same shift, and everybody's trying to define it. And corporate is such an interesting space right now because it's always been about masculine egos and and it's shifting. When you shift to the feminine, it's all about heart, and it's all about, and everyone's going through this identity crisis, including what does corporate look like. And we talked about it before we start recording. I feel like the next couple of years are really transitional, and the planet's going to go through a massive shift.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are going to struggle. For me, everyone has a choice whether they choose to do the internal work, the healing, or whether they get consumed by what's happening on the planet.
Yeah.
How does that feel to you when I say to you that I feel like the next couple of years are going to be transitional and a lot of change? For me, my advice to everybody is to ride the wave, let go of your expectations. It's easy for me to say that, but how does that feel to you?
No, it feels on point. I mean, it's something that I'm also aware of. And, it reminds me in a way of, I think one of the most startling things for me coming into adulthood was realizing that we don't really have a shared definition of what it means to be human, right? It's almost like there's so many different paths we can take. And so when I say soul defining times, when I hear you talk about everybody has a choice, I think we do. I really do think we do. And I don't think, again, this is a cliche that's often repeated, but I'm really living into this space of, it's not what happens to us that defines us. It's the meaning we attach, the stories we tell ourselves, the labels that we accept into our lives that really define us. And in that somewhere, there's a great freedom for me, which can sometimes be more challenging to access. I really get that. But before we started, Nimesh, we were talking about grief and acceptance. And I think that those two things I can feel them in these times. It's like I don't just feel it in myself, I actually feel it, I don't know, in the energy of, it's going to sound very stupid and grand when I say this, but the energy of humanity. I feel the confusion. I feel the uncertainty. I feel the grief. And we're not good with grief here in the West. We're really not. We don't celebrate life, in that way. We really struggle to talk about the negative, the grief, the way it impacts us. There's no space for it in our lives. We're almost like, well, if somebody close dies or a tragedy happens, it's like, well, get over it. Just pull your socks up, put a smile on your face, and just get on with it. So I think we have an awful lot of unexpressed grief inside of our cultures, inside of our own lives. And I think some of that needs to be attended to, needs to be healed so we can fully enter into what's coming.
So beautiful. And there's so many facets of what you said I can relate to and kind of expand on in terms of, where we go next. And it's interesting you kind of, talked about the human experience. And I'll always say we're a soul having a human experience.
Yeah.
But I feel, and the way you described it, I feel is so beautiful, is that I feel that so many of us are trying to bypass the human experience.
Yeah.
And kind of, we're meant to experience pain.
Yeah.
We're meant to grieve. We're meant to, and it's just, if you push it down, we're like a volcano. If you push things down, eventually it has to come up in some kind of way. And, again, we talked about it before. I do agree with you. It feels like, you called it humanity. For me, it's the collective. It's like we're all going through the shift and everybody's handling it differently. Everybody's handling it in their own unique way. There's no right or wrong.
Yep.
Who are we to tell anybody how to, we're all having that human experience. But it does feel like a collective period of mourning.
Yeah.
And what are we grieving? What are we mourning? I feel like we're grieving the old version of ourselves, our expectations of what life would look like.
Yeah.
So many people, and it's January, right? January is like the time where we take stock, we set some resolutions and we look at our life, and, we're recording on this on the 9th. A lot of people would have started resolutions on the 1st and maybe stopped doing them by the 9th. Who knows, right? But it's, for me, this life is for living. And we talked about it. It's just, we're a soul having a human experience. So what if whatever we're experiencing isn't good or bad? It just is.
Yeah.
What if we could just embrace and just take every experience and just stop and just, because you said it, it's not what happens to us, it's how we respond to what happens to us. What happens if we respond to what happens to us by really asking, well, hold on, what are we learning here? How is this expanding me? Because I do believe everything that's happening to us is happening to us for a reason and is serving us in some kind of way. It's happening for us rather than to us. And whenever I say that, I know that triggers people, right? Because if you're going through something and it's intense, I'm sending so much love out to the planet right now because the planet is going through so much. As we're recording this, so there's fires in California, which is insane. It's crazy. And then there's all these wars and I'm sending so much love out.
Yeah.
But again, it's just, if we could realize that everything is happening to us, is happening for us, and there is a lesson there for our soul. It's a soul expanding period. How does that sound to you when I talk about, whatever's happening to us is happening for us and is expanding us? It's part of our soul journey. How does that sound to you? How does that make you feel? Where do you feel that in your body?
I feel it in my heart with a great big effing yes. It's what I'm really living into with Sacred Changemakers, is this shift, which I can kind of encapsulate in just a question that I ask to my clients. Because the shift is, do you want to be the best in the world, or do you want to be the best for the world?
Ooh, I
And
love that.
that is what Sacred Changemakers stands for. And we live in a culture and a society where we've been conditioned to think we should be the best in the world, which is a very different way of relating to yourself, to others, to power, to the work that you do in the world, than actually being for the world. And so this is exactly what I see this time's calling for, Nimesh. It's exactly how you describe it. But also at the same time, that's so important, because I think we're piercing the illusion. We thought we were stood on solid ground. We thought we knew, right? As humans, we think we can dominate the planet and extract everything we want in the name of profit, and more and more and more. And when will it ever be enough? Well, anyone, who's ever looked at growth realizes it needs to be cyclical. It can't just keep on growing at any cost. Nothing can. That's cancer in the body. And so we are being invited, I think, to turn and face what we've created, and to ask ourselves, is this what it means to be human? Is this the best we can do? I don't think so. And, that could on first glance sound very negative, but look at what we've created. We're so incredibly powerful. We can create anew. And that's the hope, the active hope that I hold. But it's also this deep belief I have in all of us to respond to the times that we're in ways that is new, is fresh, is about not just me and the I and the me and the mine conversations that we're all conditioned into, but we start to think about change itself, because life is change. If there's no movement happening, there is no life. And therefore, the one thing we can anchor to is this process of change. So although we live in a world where we I was brought up with Newtonian physics, like particles, this is how it is, right? And that's kind of the New Year's resolutions. This is who I am. This is what I want. This is what I'm going to do. Let me bridge that gap. But now, on these shifting sands where we all find ourselves, it's more in the quantum space. It's more like flow. Leadership is more today about listening than it is about standing up and speaking your truth. You have to listen deeply to yourself, to others, to life itself, to know where it is you're being called. It's not just about you figuring it out in your head. Can we show up in a more whole way with all of us into the conversations, even the pieces that we think are not allowed in some environments? And for many of us, there are many environments where pieces of ourselves are not welcome, or we think they're not. And so, it's time to push that membrane of possibility and really, really live into our potential, I think, as humans.
It's really interesting. You called it a humbling period. That resonates with me so much, because the divine masculine is all about the ego.
Yeah.
And it's like, and everyone talks about the death of the ego. I feel like we need our ego. It kind of is trying to keep us safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we've built our egos up, right? All this, especially in the corporate world, right? All these egos. You look at everything that's happening right now. It's like so many of these people that have built themselves up to be this image of, and then all those. And I feel like a lot of egos are going to be shattered. A lot of people that, I don't want to get into the politics of it, but a lot of people who we put on a pedestal. I feel like, because I feel like we're shifting into the age of the community, and I do. The reason why humbling sounds so, it's because how much control do we really have? It's like we feel like we have this control, and I feel like the universe, Mother Nature, whatever you want to call it, has a way of humbling us, right?
Yeah, completely.
Of just taking it, whatever we think we can control. The universe is like, okay, all right, let's see how much you control. And it's not a power trip. It's a realization that whatever you have is never truly yours, right? It's a human thing. It's that, and the only control we have is what do we focus on this moment?
Yeah.
If we can truly just focus on the magic, the love, the passion in this moment, and realize that the only control we have is in this moment. So we talked about it, right? Whatever happens to us is serving us, but we can respond in this moment.
Yeah, we absolutely can. And I think you said something there that really, really resonates for me, which is this idea of kind of control and, I'll say, ownership. Because if we think we own something, we think it's ours and therefore nobody else can have it. And this goes through all levels of kind of system, right the way up to countries, This is America, you can't come in. Right? I mean, it's ridiculous. How can I was in Ecuador in October 2023, and I remember one of the chiefs coming to me, he's going, I really don't understand this. How can you own the land? It's like owning the rain, he said to me. Nobody owns the rain. How can you own the land? And I was like, he's going, you are guardians, you are earth keepers, you don't own anything. And I
Wow.
just thought that very simple, idea that we just take for granted, particularly in the West. It's like, oh yeah, let me accumulate all this stuff. And then I'll be better, I'll be bigger, I'll be more worthy. Is
And
it really? Is the power
yeah.
really in the stuff?
And it's the and then, right? It's and then when I
Yeah.
meant this, and then it's like it's almost like, again, we talked about it before we started recording. It's like we're waiting to live.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
again, I can't believe I'm quoting Nicki Minaj or Drake in a song, but it's like I remember a line there which says, everybody dies, but does everybody live?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
that, and for me, living is about being present in this moment,
Yeah.
being humble, and realizing whatever we have is not truly ours, right? And it's just thinking of another song. I don't know what's going on today, but trust me, I'm not going to start singing. And nobody wants that, but it's like we have power in this present moment.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's interesting you talked about properties, because I'll always say, whatever gifts we have are not ours. They're given from a different space. You could call them God given, whatever, but they're not ours. It's like whatever knowledge we have. And this is why I love how I do this podcast, is because we don't plan anything. I talked about it before we started recording. Nothing was planned. Whatever comes up, comes up. And that for me is the magic of just being present.
Yeah.
There's and everything is kind of channeled, and it's not ours. Whatever knowledge we're sharing, coming from a space where, and that, I just encourage people just to stop and just breathe and
Yeah.
honor what are you feeling in this present moment. Because we run away, as you talked about earlier, we run away from our feelings.
Yeah.
We hide them. Right now, it feels like everybody's in some period of mourning, right? Some period of, I really feel like the space we're in right now is transitional, right? It's transitioning from, divine masculine to divine feminine. Everyone's kind of feeling a bit lost. Everybody's kind of feeling the divine masculine is in crisis and the divine feminine is trying to figure out who it is. And it's just, but what if we could just be present?
Yeah.
What if we could be present and just experience the moment? And the way I like to look at life is almost stepping outside of myself and realizing that everything is happening to me is everything I asked for.
Mm.
Everybody in my life is playing the roles I asked them to play as a soul. So if somebody's triggering me right now, then they're meant to. Because it's teaching me. And it's just like, if we could just do that and just realize that we're a soul having a human experience, and why are we trying to bypass the human experience?
Yeah.
Whatever you're experiencing in this moment, whatever you're feeling, honor it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And be honest with yourself.
Yeah. Allow yourself to feel, because I think for all of us, there's places where we don't easily go internally. And I think to reframe those places as those challenges, as just as you've just described, Nimesh, as that's where the treasure lies. That's the learning. That's the edge that you really need to go and be with, which is a very different way of thinking about power as well in life, because a lot of people think life happens to them, like we said. But if
Yeah.
it's happening for them, as you're describing, now we're in an equitable position with our own power. It's and our own lives. And I do think that the most important, I mean, a lot of people say the most important relationship we have with ourselves is with ourselves. And I think that's, there's a lot of value in that. But for me, I also think the relationship we have with our life is really
Mm.
important. Like, how do we hold it? And it, are you in, see, you were talking about singing. I want to talk about dancing now. Are you dancing with life? Because there's an ebb and a flow. There's a masculine and a feminine. There's a time for both. I feel this is a time of integration.
Yeah.
I think this is a time where, one of the things that I learned decades ago in leadership is polarity management. But in a way, polarities are just constructs. We see them as opposites. And one of the things we learn in polarity management is it's not to get rid of or move away from the one you don't like towards the one you do. It's just about managing those opposites. And what's been most startling, I think, for me at this point in my own development is realizing I have the capacity now to hold it all. Well, maybe not it
Mm.
all, but the polarities. I can feel sad and excited and happy at the same time. Like, it's not just one. And there's that great story that I think comes from shamanism about the two wolves on the inside. And a really good friend of mine, John Blakey, reminded me of this recently, which is, the young girl goes to the grandfather who's telling her this story about the two wolves inside. And one is kind of like negative and speaks about how you're not worthy and you have no self-esteem and all of this. And the other one is just telling you how glorious and amazing you are. And the little girl, after hearing this story, and I apologize for bastardizing it, but actually says, but Grandpa, which one wins? And he says, the one you feed.
Yeah.
And I think that's so true for all of us, where in this world where our attention is being dragged into places by algorithms and technology, and we are distracted continuously for a goal that may not be ours, right?
Yeah.
How
It's
do
so
we
powerful.
recapture our
Mm.
attention? How do we come back to ourselves and what is most important in our lives? That, I think, is what this integration is really about. Because are we going to decide for ourselves what it means to be human? Or are we going to look outside of ourselves and see all the hands waving at us to go in lots of different directions and buy certain things? Because if we don't, we won't be worthy. Or are we going to recapture our attention and say, hang on, I'm noticing here, and I'm being pulled in a direction that doesn't feel quite resonant to me. So therefore, let me stay with what's most important. Let me feed the right wolf.
That's so powerful the way you just put it. It's just, I feel like we've been running away from ourselves for so long.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we can't. The universe isn't going to let us do it anymore.
No.
It's a time for us to be honest with ourselves and do the work, because how often do people want a quick fix?
Yeah.
Tell me what I need to do, and just, you're feeling something, you run away from it, you push it down. It's just, which wolf do you, who do you feed? And, the magic for me is in the present moment,
Yeah.
is being honest with yourself. I mean, hopefully you don't mind me sharing, but we started this conversation where, before we started recording, and I asked you, I'm like, well, hold on, I feel some emotion in you. And,
Yes.
how often how many people start a conversation like that? And it's like, well, hold on a second. Normally it's like, oh yeah, the weather. Yeah. How's, it's kind of like chit chat. And I don't apologize. I can't chit chat. I don't think it's in me, but, but it's having that honest conversation. It's like, hold on, I feel something.
Yeah.
And honoring it. And it's just, that for me is what speaking your truth is about. It's not about speaking with anger. It's about, what are you feeling? But what if you could start with having an honest and true conversation with yourself?
Yeah.
How do you really
Absolutely.
feel? The planet, everybody is in some sort of shift, and it's okay.
Yeah.
But are you running away from the shift that's happening inside you? Are you owning it?
Yeah.
Because the way I see it is there's two parts of us. We have four bodies: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. I won't get into that too much now, right? But
Yeah.
we have essentially two parts of us that I feel are in crisis. The human that is, kind of scared about what the change is coming, that's like feeling really uncomfortable, is kind of used to creating this facade of themselves, and all of that facade is breaking down. Is like, and there's the spiritual side, which is excited,
Mm.
which knows that this phase that we're in right now was planned. It's exactly where we should be. And I feel like the two sides of us have always kind of been in conflict,
Mm.
but there's so much more in conflict than ever before, because the spiritual side knows that nothing is missing and everything is happening has been planned, and it's kind of, let's just go with it. It's almost like the spiritual side is riding the roller coaster and say, yay. And the human side is saying, no, wait, I'm not ready. I don't think we can wait. I don't think we have a choice. And so I
Well,
guess
that's the truth.
my
I don't think
message
we
to
do
those
have a
listeners
choice.
is embrace it, right? What if we can
Yeah.
embrace it? What if we can embrace this and just be?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. There's no need to struggle. You said something like that to me in a previous conversation. And I think that I don't just think that. I feel that. I know that we are so much more powerful than we know.
Yeah.
So much more powerful than we're enculturated. I don't even know if that's a word, into. But it's almost like life that we've defined is set up to keep us small,
Yeah, it's a
to
program.
keep us in our place, especially if any of the listeners are in some kind of minority. And I feel that as a woman. When you were talking about me being emotional before, there was a little part of me on the inside that was like, oh no, you can't do that publicly. You're a woman. They'll just think that you're going to burst into a load of tears and sadness over there. You can't possibly lead if you're emotional. I used to work for companies, this is going back now into the 90s, where as a leader, you were told to leave your emotions at the door as you walked in. This is not a place for that. This is a place of business. And so what's so liberating at this stage of my life is, I don't know, it's not that I don't care, I really do. I am at my very heart as a human, a people pleaser. I want to be liked. And because of that, I mean, we've talked about this, I'm also psychic. But here I am at the age of, I'm about to turn 58. And it's only been in the last 12 months I've felt able to express that in the world, because I thought it would negate my entire authority. I thought I would lose kind of credibility, and people would think I had no rigor, was floating around in the ether with the angel ladies, right? That actually has not been my experience at all. And I just think, why didn't I do this earlier? There are we're like a diamond. There's many facets to us. And it's where we focus our attention. And I remember working, with some organizations, and we have this tendency to put people in a box. And I remember somebody saying to me, oh, you do that as well? And I was like, we thought all you did was like CEO, like board strategy. And I was like, oh no, we do other things as well. And I think that sometimes our minds can be the prison that contains us and keeps us small. But
Yeah.
one thing I have learned, I mean, you talked about the 4 different, like, physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental energy bodies. And I think this is the time that we embrace all of that and kind of get out of our heads. I mean, I work with a lot of leaders from different spaces, not just corporate, but founders as well. And it's really interesting how we put the mind on a pedestal. We, like the body, the only purpose of the body is to take our heads to meetings, you know? Right? And so,
But it's the vessel for our soul, right?
yeah, so it's like, okay, so what does it mean to show up whole? What does it mean to live into your potential? What does it mean to get on purpose for you? Not what everybody else thinks purpose is, and then what does it mean to do it in this moment and this and this?
So
Because
beautiful.
everything is continuously changing, including you.
Yeah.
And so responding to that energy, that spark within. And I mean, I say something which feels very alive for me, which is, you said community. I think each individual is a community of a
Yeah.
number of parts as well, which includes the divine.
Yeah.
So how do we partner with life itself? How do we partner with the spark within?
It's
And I
about
think,
letting go of our expectations.
and our labels and who we think
Yeah.
we are and who we think we are not, because that decides what we will and won't do.
Yeah. It is the death of the ego, right? When I talked about the two parts being in crisis, for the reason the human's in crisis is because we've worked really hard to be this human.
Yeah.
Whatever label we give ourselves, whether this CEO, whether it's a parent, whether it's whatever label, and it's just like we've fought hard to be this person, right? This whatever training we've been through, whatever. And ironically, it's all that knowledge that we have to let go of,
Yeah.
because that's old paradigm, and it's that and it's like we have to, there's two of us on this podcast talking about being present and kind of embracing the spiritual side and just trusting and letting go, and where there's so many people having a human experience out there, like, no, hold on, I'm a CEO, I'm this, I'm that. Are you?
Yeah.
Or are you a human that's having your soul that's having a human experience? And
Yeah.
things are shifting, and this is why people are in crisis, because this shift is real. This shift is, and we're mourning our old self, and it's just,
Yeah.
but you said yourself, we have so much power.
We do.
It's so
We do. But
interesting in this conversation. You can think of yourself as being weak, right? Wait, hold on. You're saying to me that I need to let go of this old version of myself, but hold on. If everything in your external world is a result of something in your internal world, then you being present gives you so much more power, because you can respond to this moment. You can, you can react, and react is kind of primal and go ego, and whereas response is more from the heart.
yeah,
And
it
when you
is. And I
said
can
we
feel,
have power, we do. How does that
we
make
do.
you feel when I say, Jayne, you have the power to shift who you are and to shift where the planet is? How does that make you feel?
It's great. It gets me excited. It really does. But you said something there that really, like, I felt, oh, yeah, that's one of mine. And it was the word hard. I've worked really hard to get here. Life is hard. Being Jayne in the world is hard. Being a human today is hard. Being a coach, being a change maker, it's hard. What if it isn't?
What if it's beautiful?
What if it's beautiful and ease and flow and it's so much easier than I ever expected? What if this year isn't going to be hard? What if the changes are easy?
It's
What if, what if the change? And I'm reminded of, I was speaking with Jacob Trollbeck, who's one of the guys that designed the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And he said to me something that's really stuck with me. He said, we think change is hard, but change to something better is really easy. And I was like, whoa. So if we can believe in a better life, a better world, a better future. Surely it's going to be easy.
And you know, maybe it is as simple as that.
I mean, I don't know. That's the other thing
I mean,
that I
what if
confront
we
all
could
the
get
time
excited?
is no,
Yeah.
we don't know. We don't know anything. We
Yeah, but
don't
do
know
we
the
need to
future.
know?
Huh? We
Who
don't need to
decides if
know.
it's who decides if it's good or bad? What if it just
Yeah.
is?
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, you described, kind of how hard, and it's just whatever you believe your truth is your truth.
Yeah.
So if you believe that what's coming next is going to be hard, universe is like, okay.
Yeah.
If you decide, but what if it's not hard or easy? What if it just is? And it's just, I mean, you said it earlier. What if we switch from I think to I feel?
Yeah.
That for me is the best thing, best advice I can give everyone. Is just, when you're asking yourself a question, how do I feel about this? And
Yeah.
be honest with yourself.
Yeah. How do I feel about this? And how can I get to Rumi's field? Out beyond the field of right and wrong, there is a field. I'll meet you there. How can I live there?
And
That's a quest I'm on.
yeah, and look, we kind of make some of this stuff sound easy, and we know it's a transition, right? This is why I call it a
Oh,
transition
yeah.
period. And
Yeah.
be kind to yourself, right? Be kind, but
Yeah.
it's just I'm excited about this phase. I can
Yeah,
feel
me
the
too.
planet's going through a shift, but I know that I chose to be here.
Yeah.
I know as a soul that I chose to be here at this time,
Yeah.
and that my role, whatever it is important. But everyone that's listening to this podcast, your role is just as important as mine. It's not any less or
Absolutely.
more. It's just
Yeah.
we're all having this human experience. And, what if we could just embrace the magic in this moment? And it's interesting. It's like when I say things like everything in your external world is a result of something in your internal world, that does trigger people. If you're going through something and somebody says to you, well, you asked for this, they'll be like, why would I ask for this? But your soul asks for it because it's expanding you. It's releasing some karma in some kind of way. But there's so much power. You said it. If everything in our external world is a result of something in our internal world, then actually we have the power to change it.
Yeah.
And it's this whole conversation has been, quite a roller coaster of emotion, right? And it's just you could look at it one way and say, "Wow, these guys are intense." They're saying that the next few years are going to be really, but actually, it's also very powerful. What if we could get excited about the change that's coming?
Yeah.
How often do we complain about the world and these people and this control? And what if we have an opportunity to make a difference?
Yeah. I think we do. I really think we do. And I think that choice is open to all of us. And the real question is, like I said earlier, what will you do? How will you hold these times? What will it be about for you? Because we all live in very different worlds in a way. But what most of us don't realize is we construct that world that we live within. And therefore, if you believe things that are not supporting you, then, and I'm going to sound very flippant when I say, well, change your beliefs. But the truth is, I know you can because I've lived it. And so for me now, a judgment in a decision is something right or wrong. It's more, who am I becoming if I say yes? And who am I becoming if I say no? And which one is really supporting the life that I want to lead? And which one is taking me closer to resonance in a way, to alignment of closing this gap between who I am on the inside and who I show to the world, how I show up on the outside? Because what I realized a number of years ago now, I don't know how long, but there was a big gap between who everybody else knew me to be and who I was on the inside. And so life has been a continuous unfolding of allowing more of me to be visible, which is scary at times and has been, but I found it to be ultimately a really liberating and rewarding journey to just be myself. It sounds so easy to say it, but just be myself, speak my truth, be honest, even when it feels really uncomfortable to do so. Yes, I do it with compassion, or I try. But, and I don't always do it right. But we're human. We're fallible. We don't know everything. We shouldn't be expecting ourselves to know everything and do everything right first time in a really fast way so that we can accumulate more stuff and get up the ladder, wherever that ladder is leading for most of us. Like, what is our definition of a successful life?
Yeah.
What is that? Right?
I mean,
We
does it
don't
matter how
really.
much money, how many buildings you have? What does it?
No, it really doesn't. It doesn't. And, the wisdom traditions know all of this. Many of these things we've been talking about today are shared across different traditions. And it's always been interesting to me that, and I didn't get this at one point in my life. I remember, I think it was Vedanta that was talking about you come into this life naked and then, you kind of get like, well, you've got no money and you're just starting out, you're in rags. And then you go through all this stuff. And then at the end of life, you're back in rags because you're so humble about life. None of that shit matters. Let it go. And
It's so
so,
powerful. Yeah.
and that's the rising in consciousness in a way. And it's not that those at the top are any different to those at the bottom. We've
Who
got this
decides top or
idea that
bottom? Yeah.
life is a triangle, that we've got to rise up the ladder to get to the apex.
Yeah.
Well, what if life was a circle
Yeah.
or a spiral
Yeah.
or
I mean,
something else?
I do feel like everything's being kind of. I mean, you talked about the Western world, and we have created this facade that
Yeah.
there's different worlds, and it's just I
Yeah.
mean, I had the pleasure of spending a couple of weeks in Ubud just in December, and it's just just watching people be present.
Yeah.
Maybe not have lots of money, but it's just like, but they have a beautiful existence, right? And
Yeah.
it's just like, wait, hold on. We think that we have all this stuff. What are we going to do with it? I mean, I
Yeah.
really do feel this roller coaster. And my advice to everyone, if you could just embrace how you really feel, start from there and just switch from I think
Yeah.
to I feel. Because the way you described it is beautiful. The way I see, we come into this world as a baby, right? We have no programming. We
Yeah.
cry, we get attention. Whether that's cry to feed me, to change, change
If
diapers,
we're
whatever.
lucky.
But it's just very humbling, right? But then we get
Yeah.
all this programming, all
Yeah.
this, and ironically, being a baby is probably being the most present you can be. There's no
Yeah.
expectations, there's no programming. And then everyone then talks about just being. So we're trying to get back, go full cycle and just be present in the moment and just because that's all we can control. So we go full cycle. We have all this knowledge, all this learning, all this experiencing, all this programming and expectations. But we're trying to get back to that moment of just being present.
Yeah. And I will never forget, the programming happens much earlier than we think. My granddaughter was about 18 months old. She was just beginning to talk. And I remember saying to her about, I can't remember what it was now, but it was some kind of, I think it was a soccer ball. Yeah, it was. It was a soccer ball. And I said to her, should we play soccer? And she said, no, Nana, I don't do that. I'm a girl.
Wow.
18 months.
Wow.
I was like, whoa, this
Wow.
is coming very quickly. And we were being quite conscious in the way we were raising her, but the culture kind of comes in, like the programs she watches on TV, the books that she reads, all of
Yeah.
that is kind of shaping the personality. So that by the time she goes to school, she's got a very clear idea that she's not only female, she's also of Hispanic origin, and she's less than. somehow
Yeah,
the white boy's in the room. Interesting.
it really is a. But I do feel that program's being just changed, and
Yeah,
by the way, we call it football. Just so you know, we won't get into that.
I know. You see, I'm no American citizen, British and
But
American.
it's
I
another
kind of
label, right? It's another label.
another
Um,
label.
but it's just but listen, I could talk to you for hours. I love this
Too.
conversation. It's just the shift that we're going through. It's just I really do feel we have a simple choice.
Mm.
We embrace it. We get excited by it, or we get scared. And I know that at times we're going to be on either side, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's not good
and
or
that
bad.
includes me too. I mean, I may understand a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, fear and love, I feel, are kind of part of the same equation. And one of the things that I often think about is if I can just mindfully approach my fears and I can bring love to them, it shifts everything for me. So,
Wow. Whatever the question, the answer is always love.
yeah. Yeah, you say that so well, Nimesh.
Yeah, I love it because it's true. I really, I don't, it's not always easy to embody, right? I know words
Mm,
are, but here's the stages of healing for me is awareness is always the first stage. So it's like some of these conversations we have means that we become more aware,
mm,
but then we have to accept
yeah,
because you said something earlier. It's like, well, what if I knew this 10 years ago, whatever, but we haven't
yeah,
got a time machine. So the next stage is
yeah,
acceptance that we created this reality, acceptance that we can change this reality,
yeah,
acceptance that actually we've led a program life for so many years. We have, and being kind to ourselves. That's where I feel that we are right now, is in the phase of acceptance,
yeah.
and it is hard, or is it?
And maybe it can be easy.
Yeah, or is it?
Yeah.
So Jayne, I mean, actually, we've spoken a few times over the last few weeks, and I can talk to you about this stuff for hours because it's just, I feel like the time we're in right now is scary and exciting
Yeah. And sacred.
and sacred. Yeah, such a beautiful word. It's all been planned. This is the thing: is do we really have control? It's
No.
just an interesting time. I feel like the only control we have is in this moment, but
Yeah.
there's so much power in it. It's just, I'm not telling anyone that, when I say we don't have control, I'm saying you have control. You have a lot of power in this moment.
Yeah.
But let go of your need and your expectations of what the future looks like, because who knows? But who
Yeah.
cares?
Yeah.
So Jayne, as we close this episode out, I'd love for you to share anything that's in your heart to close us out. And I love to ask, if you have a journal prompt in your heart that maybe can help people go deeper on the conversation we've had.
Mm. I know. I'm watching and witnessing my language now, but it's really to find a question for yourself, one that you don't have a really easy answer to, one that you can lean into, a really beautiful question that you can fully inhabit. Because for me, the questions are what define our lives. The questions we ask ourselves, the questions we ask of others, the questions we ask of life itself. And so my question would be, how can you fully inhabit yourself and your life? And where is the call? Where is it leading you? And listen deeply in every moment, because this is not a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan. This
Hmm.
is staying aligned with that in every moment of life. Yeah.
Wow, so powerful. I would just add maybe an additional question. What are you holding on to?
Yeah.
What are you holding on to? And what I mean by that question is, what story are you telling yourself about who you are, where you should be, how are you judging yourself, and just having that honest conversation about What are you holding on to? Maybe that opens up to a deeper understanding of who you are.
Yeah.
So Jayne, I'd love for you to share anyone that kind of this conversation resonates with, wants to reach out to you, wants to work with you. What does that look like?
Well, I have a community of sacred change makers and a number of resources on our website. My new book, Beyond Profit, is also out if anybody's interested in my, deeper views of life and where we are and where we're headed. But yeah, just go to sacredchangemakers.com. Everything that, is kind of in my world is there. So, yeah.
Beautiful. I'll include that in the show notes. And yeah, Jayne's a beautiful soul and talking from the heart. I really, really love this conversation. Jayne, thank you for agreeing to be in this world and in this conversation and showing up as you are. Sending so much love and light out to everyone that's listening. Jayne, sending you the biggest spiritual hug and sending you so much love. And I'm going to hand over to you to close us out.
Thank you. Yeah, Nimesh, a lot of gratitude going your way. And to all the listeners, thank you for making space in your life, for listening in at this time. And I hope that we've maybe ignited a small spark in you. Maybe it's a spark of a small change, maybe it's a spark of a big change, but listen to whatever impulse is within you that is leading you in a direction. And thank you so much for also being here in the world and your intentions to make our world a better place. Lots of love.
Oh, thank you. Beautiful words. Sending love and light. Bye for now.